Good morning, students. Today we see the rise of nationalism in Europe. This is the chapter of history, the very first lesson. This is also a continuation of the chapter first of history, class 9, the revolution, French Revolution. In French Revolution, we have seen that the idea of nation states were first developed by the French people. Nation state. What do you mean by nation state? Nation state is a concept where citizens having common identity and history. They have a specific boundary and they are having a centralized administrative system. This is called a nation state. And this idea was created by the French people in this world for the first time. In this lesson, the very first point we are going to study is what were the measures adopted by the French revolutionaries to create the sense of collective identity or to create the nationalism. What do you mean by nationalism? Nationalism means your love towards a nation. That is nationalism. You understand that you belong to a particular nation. That is called nationalism. What were the various measures adopted by the French revolutionaries to create this sense that they are all belonging to a French nation? The very first point is that they have promoted the idea of la patrie and les citoyens. Now, what do you mean by la patrie? La patrie means the land of fathers. Land of fathers means the land belonged to our ancestors. That means nobody else having any kind of right over this land. This is completely of the people because it belonged to our ancestors. That is mean by la patrie. The next point is les citoyens. Les citoyens means of the people. That means the land belonged to our ancestors, it belonged to the citizens. The land is of the people. So nobody else have any kind of right over this. So these were the two ideas, very first ideas created by the French revolutionaries, that is la patrie and les citoyens. Now second point is that the estate generals were renamed into National Assembly. You remember that. In class 9, I taught you estate generals were the representatives of the three estates. First estate, second estate, and third estate. And from there only they came out of the meeting hall and met in a tennis court and they started the preparation of the constitution. So that estate generals were renamed by the revolutionaries into National Assembly. So this is third point. Now fourth point is that they created hymns. Now what do you mean by hymn? In our local language we call bhajans. Hymns were created in the name of nation. Oaths were taken. Oath means shabadlan. The people took oath in the name of nation. Next point is martyrs were commemorated. Now who were the martyrs? The people died for the nation, maybe fighting in the war. They were commemorated. What do you mean by commemorated? Commemorated means their days were remembered. There may be death anniversary might have remembered. Birthdays were celebrated. Next point is that they have adopted a new centralized administrative system. For various provinces of France should be ruled from one government, and centralized administrative system was called for that. Then French language, they were given priority. All the regional languages were prohibited or discouraged, and the French language were given priority. They have adopted another French flag. The royal standard was removed, and French flag, they adopted a tricolor national flag were adopted for the nation. Next step is they have abolished the internal customs. What is internal customs? Whenever the business people wanted to trade with the neighboring states, they wanted to give the tax to the government. So that tax was abolished, and all throughout the Europe, the people were free to trade with. So that is mean by the abolition of the internal customs. Now another one is that they have adopted the uniform system of weights and measures. Earlier, before the revolution, the weights and measures were different. What I measure 1 meter of cloth may not be 1 meter in the neighboring state. It may be different, maybe 1.5 meter or 1 kilo. Whatever I measure here, it may be sometimes it may be more than 1 kilo there, neighboring state, maybe less than 1 kilo what we measure in our own places. So these were all removed by the revolutionaries. So uniform measures of weights. That means all over the area of France, the same weight and measures will be adopted. So these were the some of the measures adopted by the French revolutionaries to create the sense of nationalism, or they are all having the collective identity. They are all belonging to the nation. So I will repeat once again. What were the points that we have studied just now? The very first idea is the idea of la patrie and les citoyens. I already explained. La patrie means the land belonging to fathers. Les citoyens means these of the citizens. The next point is that the estate generals were renamed into National Assembly. Third point, we have already studied the new hymns were created, martyrs were commemorated, French language was given priority, regional languages were discouraged, centralized administrative system was adopted, internal custom duties were abolished. All these were all in the name of the nation. Even the martyrs were commemorated, all in the name of nation. So these were the answer to the question, what were the various measures and practices adopted by the French revolutionaries. Then next one we are going to see that in class 9th we have already studied what happened when the all democratic governments were a failure. Napoleon Bonaparte took the charge, and he brought back the aristocracy to France again. Bonaparte had already adopted some measures, and these were all together is called a Napoleonic Code or the Civil Code of 1804. The same thing but two names. One is Napoleonic Code, another one is the Civil Code of 1804. And what were the steps adopted by the Napoleon to give to the people? The very first point that he adopted is that the privileges based on birth was abolished. In class 9th, I already taught you, the third estate was compelled to give the tax to the government. First estate and the second estate was not having any right to give the tax. So they were exempted from the tax. So these privileges based on birth, why it is called based on birth? If you are taking birth in first estate or second estate, you are free from the tax. But if you are taking birth in a third estate, you are compelled to give the tax. The very first step adopted by Napoleon was this. He abolished the privileges based on the birth and given equality before the law for all the citizens. Equality before the law. This was the first time that the French people hear that we can also be treated equally with others. So the very first step through Napoleonic Code is that abolished the privileges based on birth and the people were granted the equality before the law. Second point is that administrative divisions were simplified. Administrative divisions means the various divisions, various separate provinces, they had separate governments. These were all normalized. And already I told you centralized administrative system. Just like the revolutionaries were adopted, the Napoleon also given permission for that. Third point is established the right to property. All the citizens have given the right to property. You can also have the property if you have. It is not a fundamental right, but people can have the property. The government will secure your property. It can be granted. The next one is that feudal systems were abolished. Feudal system means what we call in India is the Jamindari system. It was abolished. Now the peasants were given the land and they have to cultivate. These were all adopted by a Napoleonic aristocrat. Then peasants were freed from the serfdom and the manorial dues. Serfdom and manorial dues means the peasants were working under the serf. Serf means landlords. And that system is removed. And the manorial dues means the default, the tax which was used to give to the landlord was abolished. Whoever not paid, they were free. Now they no longer they have to pay to the landlords or the serf. In French language, they were called serf. Then removal of the guild restrictions from the towns. Now, what do you mean by guild restrictions? Guilds were the associations of the traders and the manufacturers. They maintained the quality and controlled the price of the commodities, trade guilds. And the trade guilds were abolished. Now, whoever wants to manufacture or produce something, they can come to the cities and produce whatever they like. They can have the business. Earlier, trade guilds were restricting the people to come to the group or to start a new business. Now that trade guilds were removed by Napoleon Bonaparte. Next point is that improvement in transport and communication system. That was also adopted by Napoleon Bonaparte. The transport and communication system was improved. Adoption of common national currency. Earlier, all the regions had separate currencies. And that was removed, and the Napoleon adopted one currency for entire the region of France, and that was also for the first time for the French people. Uniform laws and standardization of weights and measures, as I already told you, that also given priority by Napoleon Bonaparte. Or enter the area, uniform measures of laws and the measures and weights were adopted by Napoleon Bonaparte. So these were the steps adopted by the Napoleon Bonaparte. So once again I will tell you what is the steps taken by the by Napoleon Bonaparte through his Civil Code of 1804. So the very first one is that he had adopted the all the privileges based on birth was removed. Internal custom duties were abolished. Administrative divisions were simplified, right to property were given, feudal system was abolished, manorial dues were abolished, serfdom was removed, guild restrictions were removed, uniform laws of measures and weights were adopted, and all throughout the nation one currency was adopted. So these were the steps taken by French in France by Napoleon, and even now these systems were followed by the people of France. Not only the people of France, throughout the world the people have adopted these measures, many of the measures. That is why it is called legacy of French Revolution. These were given to the people. The rights were given to the people, and even these were adopted in India also. The fundamental rights are granted to the citizens. So these were the 2 points that we are studied today. Is the first one is the measures adopted by the French revolutionaries. Second one is the Napoleonic Code or the Civil Code of 1804. And these are the 2 long answers that you have to study in the first unit or first lesson. Thank you, students. Let us see tomorrow.